What if the person you are terrified of losing was never worth losing yourself for? Think about it. You reply faster than you want to. You stay when you should leave. You forgive things that quietly destroy your self-respect. And every night, you wonder why someone who once meant everything to you can make you feel like you mean nothing to them. But here is the truth most people discover too late. Losing someone is painful. Losing yourself trying to keep them is devastating. The Stoics understood something that most of us spend years learning the hard way. You cannot control who stays. You cannot control who leaves. You cannot force someone to love you, choose you, or recognize your worth. But you can control one thing, whether you abandon yourself just because someone else did. Hello everyone, welcome to the Stoic Hypnosis channel. And in this video, we are going to uncover the Stoic wisdom that can completely change the way you see loss, rejection, attachment, and love. Because sometimes, the greatest loss in your life isn't losing someone, it's becoming someone you no longer recognize just to make them stay. Now, let's get started. Part 1. When you fear losing someone, you begin to lose yourself. There is a moment in life when you stop asking, "Do they truly value me?" and start asking, "What do I need to do so they won't leave?" That moment is dangerous, because the moment you become more afraid of losing someone than losing yourself, you begin making small compromises. You silence the things that hurt you. You accept less than you deserve. You pretend not to notice the distance in their voice. You make excuses for their absence. You tell yourself they are simply busy, tired, confused. And slowly, without realizing it, you become a different person. Not because they asked you to change, but because you are afraid. Afraid that if you speak honestly, they might walk away. Afraid that if you set a boundary, they might find someone easier to control. Afraid that if you stop chasing, they might never come back. And this is where the Stoic philosophy asks you a painful question. If someone can only stay in your life when you betray yourself, what exactly are you trying to save? Think about that. You may believe you are fighting for love, but perhaps you are fighting against abandonment. There is a difference. Love does not require you to constantly prove your worth. Love does not demand that you become smaller so another person can remain comfortable. And love certainly should not require you to sacrifice your peace just to prevent someone from leaving. The Stoics understood that attachment becomes suffering when we try to control what was never ours to control. You can love someone deeply. You can appreciate their presence. You can give them your loyalty, your honesty, and your heart. But you cannot own their decision to stay. And once you truly understand that, something inside you begins to change. You stop begging. You stop chasing. You stop performing for affection. You begin to realize that your greatest responsibility is not keeping another person in your life. It is keeping yourself intact when they choose to walk away. Because anyone can lose someone, but the person who can lose someone without losing themselves has discovered a kind of freedom that cannot be taken away. Part 2. You cannot control who chooses you. There is a painful truth that most people spend years trying to escape. You cannot make someone choose you. You can be more patient. You can become more successful. You can give more love. You can explain yourself 100 different ways. But if someone has already decided to walk away, no amount of begging can turn their heart around. And this is where most people break. Not because they lost someone, but because they keep fighting reality. They replay old conversations in their minds. What did I do wrong? What if I had said something differently? Maybe if I become better, they will come back. So they start changing themselves. They become quieter, more agreeable, more available. They give more while expecting less. And eventually, they are no longer trying to build a healthy relationship. They are trying to earn a decision that was never theirs to make. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught a simple principle. Some things are within our control, and some things are not. Your actions are yours. Your choices are yours. Your response is yours. But another person's feelings, their loyalty, their attraction, their decision to stay, those belong to them. And the moment you accept this, something incredibly powerful happens. You stop wasting your energy trying to control the uncontrollable. Imagine standing at the edge of the ocean, commanding the waves not to come. You could scream at them. You could fight them. You could spend your entire life demanding that the water obey you. But the ocean does not care. The wise person does something different. They learn how to stand. Life is the same. People will change. People will leave. People will disappoint you. Sometimes they will choose someone else. And none of that automatically means you were not enough. It means they made a choice. Your dignity begins when you stop treating someone else's choice as a verdict on your worth. You don't need to convince someone of your value. You need to remember it yourself. Because when you finally understand that you cannot control who stays, you stop living in fear of who might leave. And that is when love becomes healthier. You can love without clinging. You can care without begging. You can give without destroying yourself. And most importantly, you can let someone walk away without following them into the darkness. Because sometimes, letting go is not losing. Sometimes, letting go is the first moment you finally choose yourself. Before we go any deeper, I want you to pause for a moment. Think about the person you are afraid to lose, and ask yourself one honest question. Have I been protecting this relationship, or have I been abandoning myself to keep it alive? If this question touched something inside you, don't leave yet, because the next lessons may change the way you see love, rejection, attachment, and even your own worth. And if you believe these words are speaking directly to a part of your life you've never been able to explain, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Not because I want another number, but because there are lessons we often need to hear more than once. Sometimes, one sentence reaches you at exactly the moment you need it. So stay until the end, because the final lesson may be the one that helps you understand something you've been struggling with for years. You were never meant to lose yourself just to keep someone else. Part 3. Their departure does not define your worth. One of the most dangerous things about losing someone is not the silence they leave behind. It is the story you begin telling yourself because of that silence. You start thinking, maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I wasn't attractive enough. Maybe I wasn't successful enough. Maybe if I had been different, they would have stayed. And slowly, their decision becomes your identity. This is where heartbreak becomes something much deeper than sadness. You are no longer simply grieving a person. You are grieving the version of yourself you believed you had to be worthy of their love. And that is a very dangerous place to live. Because when you measure your value by another person's attention, you give them the power to determine how you feel about yourself. When they text you, you feel important. When they become distant, you feel worthless. When they choose you, you feel powerful. When they leave, you feel broken. But your worth cannot rise and fall according to someone else's mood. The Stoics understood that your character is more valuable than other people's approval. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself to return his attention to what he could govern: his own mind, his own actions, his own character. And perhaps this is something you need to remember today. Someone leaving your life does not erase everything beautiful about you. Their rejection does not rewrite your past. Their silence does not make you insignificant. Their inability to love you properly does not mean you were impossible to love. Sometimes, people leave because they are not capable of giving what you need. Sometimes they change. Sometimes the relationship simply reaches its end. And sometimes, painfully, they choose a different path. But none of those things give them the authority to define who you are. You must learn to separate their decision from your identity. Because if someone walks away and you immediately conclude, "I wasn't enough," you are allowing their choice to become your judgment. Don't do that. Let them leave if they must. Let the silence exist. Let the unanswered questions remain unanswered for a while. You do not need to chase every ending for an explanation. Some doors close without giving you the closure you wanted. And perhaps your closure is not understanding why they left. Perhaps your closure is realizing that you no longer need them to stay in order to believe you are worthy. That is when healing truly begins. Not when you stop missing them, but when you stop using their absence as evidence that something is wrong with you. Remember this: you were valuable before they arrived. You were valuable while they were beside you, and you remain valuable after they are gone. So don't spend the rest of your life trying to prove your worth to someone who already chose not to see it. Turn around, look at yourself, and ask a better question. Who do I want to become now that I no longer have to live for their approval? That question can change your life. Part 4. Let go without becoming cold. There is a misunderstanding about strength. Many people think that becoming strong means becoming cold. They stop caring. They stop trusting. They build walls around their hearts and call it self-respect. But that is not strength. That is pain-wearing armor. Real strength is something much quieter. It is being able to love someone deeply and still know when to let them go. It is being able to miss someone without chasing them. It is remembering the good moments without using them as an excuse to return to what hurts you. And most importantly, it is understanding that letting go does not mean you never cared. Sometimes, letting go is the final proof that you did. The Stoics never taught us to become emotionless. They taught us not to become slaves to our emotions. There is a difference. You can feel sadness without allowing sadness to control your decisions. You can feel loneliness without running back to someone who repeatedly broke your peace. You can miss someone without believing that missing them means you should have them back. This is where many people become trapped. They confuse familiarity with destiny. They think, "I still miss them, so maybe I should go back." But missing someone does not mean they belong in your future. Sometimes you miss a person because they were once part of your life. That is all. You can honor what existed without reopening a door that needed to close. Think about a scar. You don't stare at a scar every morning wishing the wound were still open. You simply recognize that it happened. It hurt. It changed you. And then you continue living. That is what emotional maturity looks like. You don't need revenge. You don't need to make them regret leaving. You don't need to become successful just so they will look back and realize what they lost. Because the moment you start living for their regret, they still control you. True freedom is when their opinion no longer determines your direction. You don't need them to come back. You don't need them to apologize. You don't need them to finally understand your value. You only need to become someone you can respect when you are alone with your own thoughts. And perhaps that is the hardest part of letting go. You are not only releasing another person, you are releasing the fantasy of who you hoped they would become. You are releasing the future you imagined. You are releasing the version of yourself that believed everything would eventually work out. And yes, that can hurt terribly. But sometimes life removes something from your hands, not because you were being punished, but because you were holding it so tightly that you could no longer move forward. So let go. Not with hatred, not with bitterness, not with the desperate hope that they will come back. Let go with gratitude for what was, and courage for what comes next. Because the goal is not to become someone who never gets hurt. The goal is to become someone who can be hurt and still refuse to abandon themselves. That is strength. And that is the kind of strength no one can take away from you. Part 5. Never abandon yourself again. Perhaps one day you will finally understand why losing that person hurt so much. It wasn't only because they left. It was because, for a while, You had built your entire world around their presence. Their messages became your happiness. Their attention became your reassurance. Their approval became your confidence. And when they disappeared, it felt like you disappeared with them. But you didn't. You are still here. And perhaps this is the part of the story you were never meant to understand until now. You survived every person you thought you couldn't live without. Think about that. There was a time when you believed you would never recover from someone who left. You thought the pain would last forever. You thought you would always miss them. And yet, you woke up the next morning. Then another. Then another. Life continued. You continued. And slowly, the person you thought you couldn't live without became a memory. That is the strange thing about life. We often believe that losing someone means losing our future, but sometimes losing someone simply creates the space where your real future can finally begin. The Stoics understood that everything external is temporary. People come, people go, circumstances change, our bodies change, our fortunes change. Nothing outside of us is guaranteed to remain forever. So if you build your identity around something temporary, eventually you will suffer. But if you build your identity around your character, your discipline, your principles, your ability to choose your response, then even when life takes something from you, it cannot take everything. Because the most important part of you was never theirs to possess. Your mind is yours. Your values are yours. Your choices are yours. Your dignity is yours. And your next chapter is yours. So the next time you feel the urge to chase someone who is walking away, stop. Take a breath. And remember, you do not have to convince someone to stay in order to prove that you are worth staying for. The right people will not require you to destroy yourself to keep them. And if someone chooses to leave, let them. Wish them well. Grieve if you need to. Cry if you must. But don't follow them into a life where you have to beg for the smallest pieces of affection. Choose yourself. Not because you no longer care, but because you finally understand that your life is too valuable to be spent trying to control another person's heart. There will be nights when you still miss them. There will be memories that suddenly return. There will be moments when you wonder what might have happened if things had been different. Let those thoughts pass. You don't have to fight them. Just don't build your life around them. Look forward. There is still a version of you waiting on the other side of this pain. A calmer version. A stronger version. A wiser version. A version who no longer begs to be chosen because he has finally learned to choose himself. And perhaps that is the greatest Stoic lesson of all. Don't be afraid of losing someone who chooses to leave. Be afraid of spending your entire life losing pieces of yourself just to make them stay. Because one day, they may leave anyway. And when that day comes, you want to be able to look in the mirror and say, I lost someone I loved, but I never lost myself. That is not defeat. That is freedom. Conclusion. In the end, the greatest lesson is simple. Never be so afraid of losing someone that you lose yourself trying to make them stay. You cannot control who chooses you, who leaves, or who changes. But you can control your character, your choices, your boundaries, and the way you respond. So start today. Stop chasing someone who keeps pulling away. Stop seeking approval at the cost of your peace. Set boundaries. Return to your goals. Spend time becoming stronger, wiser, and more comfortable with yourself. Remember, you can love someone deeply without abandoning yourself. If this message spoke to something you are going through, take it with you beyond this video. And if you found value here, subscribe to the channel and support us with a like. Your support gives me the motivation to continue creating deeper lessons about stoicism, strength, self-respect, and the wisdom we discover through pain. Thank you for taking the time to watch until the end of the video. See you in the next videos.